All right, let's dive into one of philosophy's most interesting and honestly kind of unsettling ideas, philosophical skepticism. We're talking about the ultimate kind of doubt, the kind that asks a question so simple it can unravel pretty much everything you think you know. So let's just start right there. Go ahead, look around you. How do you know, with 100% rock solid certainty that any of this is actually real? That you're not in a dream or being tricked by some powerful force? That little feeling of unease you might have right now? Yeah, that's the rabbit hole of skepticism. So let's jump in. You see, to really get what the skeptic is up to, we first have to understand what they're attacking. And for centuries, philosophers have been on this major quest for one thing in particular: certainty. They set an incredibly high bar for what can really, truly be called knowledge. And this gets to the heart of the matter. In philosophy, knowledge isn't just something you feel really sure about. It's what the ancient Greeks called episteme, a belief that isn't just true, but is also infallible, meaning if there is any possibility of error, any tiny crack for doubt to creep in, then by this strict definition, you don't actually know it. You just believe it. And believe me, this isn't some new idea. We can go all the way back to Plato. In the Republic, a character makes this exact point. The message is crystal clear. You can't mix knowledge with the possibility of being wrong. They're like oil and water. You just can't have both at the same time. So why this obsession with being absolutely certain? Well, the stakes are just incredibly high. The fear was that if our most basic beliefs aren't built on a foundation of pure, unshakable certainty, then the entire structure of what we claim to know, everything from science to our own memories, is basically built on sand. And one good push from a skeptic could bring the whole thing crashing down. And this incredibly high standard for knowledge? Well, that's the perfect opening for the skeptic. They're not just trying to be difficult, they're actually using philosophy's own rules against it, with a really simple but totally devastating argument. Okay, so the skeptic's attack is this elegant, three-step trap. First, they agree with the philosopher. Yep, knowledge requires absolute certainty. Second, they point out something we all kind of know is true. Our senses can fool us, our memories get fuzzy, we're not perfect. And the conclusion that follows is just brutal. If knowledge requires a certainty that we can't actually have, then we don't really know much of anything at all. And just to be clear, this isn't your normal, healthy, everyday skepticism, like when you doubt a weird-looking email. No, this is universal skepticism. This is the radical idea that questions the possibility of all knowledge, from quantum physics right down to the simple belief that the chair you're sitting on actually exists. You know, not all doubters are created equal. You have someone like Plato, who we could call a limited skeptic. He doubted our senses, sure, but only because he was trying to argue for a better, more reliable source of knowledge. The universal skeptic, though, they're playing a different game. They're not trying to find a better foundation. They're trying to prove there's no foundation at all. So, is that it? Is knowledge just impossible? Game over? Well, not so fast. Philosophers didn't just throw in the towel. They came up with a pretty clever counterattack, arguing that the skeptic's whole position might not even make sense in the first place. And the counterattack comes from a really surprising place. It's not about trying to find absolute certainty. Instead, it's about looking at how our own language actually works. We're going to check out two really clever arguments that do exactly that. The first one is probably best explained with this brilliant analogy from the philosopher Gilbert Ryle. Okay, so imagine you've got a counterfeit coin. To even be able to call it a counterfeit, to identify it as a fake, you have to, by definition, also have the concept of a genuine coin. You see? You can't have one without the other. The very idea of fake only exists because the idea of real exists. And this is the whole idea of polar concepts. They get their meaning from their opposite. The skeptic wants to say that everything we think is knowledge is really just belief. But this argument says, hold on a second. You can't have a concept of belief unless you also have a concept of knowledge to compare it to. The same goes for illusion and reality or mistaken correctness. By trying to get rid of knowledge, the skeptic accidentally makes their own argument completely meaningless. The second argument basically just flips the script on the skeptic. It says, look, we all use the word knowledge every single day for really clear examples. Like we say we know our own name or that the sky is blue. If the skeptic wants to come along and say we're all completely wrong, well, the burden of proof is on them. So it's starting to look like universal skepticism might be a dead end. But that doesn't mean it's useless. Actually, maybe the skeptic's true value isn't about winning the argument, but just in asking the question in the first place. This classic quote just perfectly exposes the self-destruct button built into the most extreme skeptical claim. I mean, if you say you know that we know nothing, you've just contradicted yourself. But if you say you don't know it, then why should anyone believe you? It's a total catch-22. And this, right here, might be the real takeaway. Maybe the skeptic's role isn't to be right, but to be something like a personal trainer for our beliefs. Their job is to constantly push us, to challenge our assumptions, and to force us to get way more precise about what we think we know and why. In a way, they keep us honest. So we end up right back where we started, but now the question is so much sharper. If the universal skeptic is wrong, and knowledge is possible, but absolute certainty is off the table for most things, then what's the middle ground? If perfection isn't the goal, how good is good enough? Now that is a question worth doubting everything for.